Hello there. Welcome to the Saroy channel. I've got a fantastic story for you tonight that happened to a young girl when she set her Wendy house on fire. And I think you're going to love this story. Let's get started. Dear Sarah and all your listeners, my name is Autumn. I cannot believe I'm doing this. That is telling you about my Bigfoot encounter, because I have never told anyone this story. Not even my husband, for fear of being ridiculed, especially as I have a high-profile position in the community. Let's just say I live in a rural area in southern Mississippi, where the nearest farms are about 3 miles away. That's all I'm going to say, nothing more. Growing up, I was a very outdoorsy sort of person, and I loved hiking and exploring, and sometimes I've even joined my father on seasonal deer hunting, although I've never hunted anything myself. I just love animals too much. I will eat meat, but killing an animal, I cannot stomach that. And I believe it may have a lot to do with my Bigfoot story. So here goes. My story happened in the 1970s, and that was a wonderful time to grow up because people had so many less hang-ups than they do today. Life was a lot more peaceful, more easygoing and relaxed. In those days, I had 2 sisters, both a year younger than each other. I was the eldest. My second younger sister was called Elaine, and the youngest was called Catherine. On Elaine's birthday, my parents gave her this huge, lifelike baby doll, the most beautiful doll that I had ever seen in my life, and they also gave her a wardrobe of clothes to dress her doll with. My sister called her doll Anna and spent countless hours playing with her. I would beg her to let me play with her doll, just for a few minutes, but to no avail. My sister simply refused to let me even hold her precious doll. One day when my sister was clearly distracted, I took my golden opportunity to play with Anna. I snatched the large doll from her bedroom, wrapped her in my arms like a loving mother would, and ran to the outdoor shed, which my father had converted into the most magnificent Wendy house. The Wendy house was set back in the furthest part of the garden. That was where the woodsy side was, and was surrounded by lots of trees, thick brush, and long grasses. However, inside the Wendy house was any girl's dream, because it was stunning. There were toys, telephones in there, little tables and chairs, and miniature teacups and teapots, and the list goes on. I do not remember all the details, but I know I was playing with the teacups and pretending to give Anna tea, and I do remember deciding to light a fire to keep Anna warm, because it was a cold day. I think I put some pieces of kindling together, as I'd watched my father do on many occasions when he started a fire in our home. And so I copied my father by doing exactly the same thing in the Wendy house. Within seconds, I kid you not, the Wendy house was engulfed in flames, and it happened so quickly, and my memory of that is so vague, but what happened next will be etched in my memory for life and is something I will never forget. I started to cry because I couldn't get out of the Wendy house. The flames were raging in front of the wooden door, and I couldn't get out. In that moment, I heard this crashing sound, a sound of like a force being pushed through wood. And then this wood in the Wendy house broke into a sizable opening, and it was done in seconds and with such ease. Something a human would never be able to do, but would need some heavy-duty tools to literally rip open that Wendy house. The next thing I knew was that these sausage-like fingers were holding me in their grasp, and I felt a warm, soft chest cradling me like a baby. I know it was a woman's chest because I could feel her soft breasts against my body. Then I looked up into the face of the largest monster that I've ever seen. The face was like a hairy gorilla, but it also had human-like quality to it. Like a gorilla that you would see at the zoo, but much, much more human than that. The creature was covered in dark brown hair and had dark eyes. She kept chattering to me, and the noise that came out of her mouth was both calming and soothing. I just remember feeling safe in her arms, and her eyes were loving. They just talked to me, and I felt a kind of telepathic communication, as if she was telling me that everything was going to be okay. The next thing I knew was I could hear my mother running from the house in her boots, screaming loudly as she saw the treehouse ablaze in flames, and she knew I was inside that house. The creature placed me on the ground and pushed me towards my mother's screaming voice. Before I knew it, I was in my mother's arms, and she was sobbing loudly. I thought thought I'd lost you," she cried. "I thought you were dead." Later my mother marveled that there was a huge opening in the Wendy house where I had escaped. I don't understand how this happened," she said. I explained that a hairy lady monster had rescued me, but my mother just laughed. "You were rescued by an angel," she insisted. She believes in that sort of thing because she's very religious. Needless to say, I knew differently. All these years later, I know that it was a Bigfoot that saved my life. I remember getting into a lot of trouble, rightly so, for playing with matches. But the worst thing that still bothers me, even today, as an older woman, is that my sister Elaine still believes I was jealous of her doll. I was determined to burn it. It upsets me that she would think a little girl could be that malicious. I just innocently wanted some time to play with her doll. I know there are terrifying stories out there about Bigfoot, but I believe, like people there are going to be good ones and bad ones, aggressive ones and peaceful ones. I believe the Bigfoot that rescued me had a mother's instinct. If it was not for her actions on that day, one thing I know for certain is I would not be alive, because that Bigfoot saved my life, and I will be eternally grateful for her and what she did. I still remember those kind, loving eyes to this day. Thank you, Sarah, and your listeners for hearing my story. Until next time, good night.